And welcome back to another episode of the Outside 50 podcast by US Footy News. I'm your host, Rick Shaibani, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Wayne Kraska.
Hey, Rick, how you doing?
Doing well. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Great. And today we have another interview with a veteran women's footy player. This time it's going to be Tara Cilke, or Cilke, as they call her, from the Denver Bulldogs. How you doing, Tara?
I'm doing well. Yes. So my last name is Cilke. And I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be on here with you guys today.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. And so we start off from the beginning, Tara. How did you find footy, and what brought you to Denver, and what got you involved with such an esteemed footy club?
Yeah, definitely. I kind of started footy how a lot of women start footy, is that we were dating a guy on the team. And so I ended up breaking up with him, but that's okay because I fell in love with an amazing sport, and I've been playing for the past 5 years now. I've grown with the sport over the last 5 years on the Denver Bulldogs, from just being a player to now being actively involved in my team. So this year, I'm officially one of the VP of Women's Operations, along with my other fellow player, Anna Thexton. And so we're tackling that together this year, which is really exciting.
That's fantastic. And how many years have you been involved altogether now?
5 years total. I've been with the Bulldogs. Yes.
Awesome.
So, Tara, you've missed the halcyon days of the women's development there in Denver, because I go way back with Anna Thexton into the US Freedom team, and she enjoyed quite a few premierships there with Denver women's team. Did she rib you about those?
No, she doesn't. Like, we're really a good, solid team. Her and I've won one championship with the Denver Bulldogs, and then the rest of the years we've had a growing season. So I at least got my one national championship in, and hoping to get some more together.
There you go.
We're growing.
Yeah, and for those of our listeners who don't remember, Kraz was actually the first coach of the USA Freedom, which is, of course, the women's national team. So, yeah, have you played with the Freedom before, Tara? Are you going to the?
I have not. So I just usually don't have the time to go and do the trainings and things like that with the Freedom or travel. I do a lot of work at home, and just being able to do the traveling is difficult for me. So I haven't tried out for them. Plus, I tend to injure myself every single year that I play. So I've been not so good at trying out or whatnot, just because I don't think I'm that skilled of a player enough to do that. I like to play more on the social level and help other players along. I don't need to go play for the international team or national team here. I am comfortable with playing for the Denver Bulldogs and helping our ladies team grow as much as possible instead.
Hey, never say never. You know.
That's very true. I'm also getting up there in age as far as footy players go. I mean, as far as being able to go on the international team, like, playing that, is there's younger players that are coming up. So I'd rather help them out and get them to where they need to be. Again, I'd rather do on the social side. You can play until you're 60, 70, 80 years old, whatever you want to do. It's awesome sport to be able to continue, especially at our level. I think it's great. I hope to see more teams that get to play, and we build the groups so we have different age groups that can play still. That'd be fantastic, either at a competition level and then more at a social level too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think it's awesome to have that one person or two or three or however many people at a club that can always help get the newcomers involved, always help the people and whoever it is, men, women, doesn't matter. We always need to work on our skills. And I think it's always good to have those go-to people at whatever club it is to be able to just be willing to mentor and coach different players who need it and who are willing to put their hand up and say, hey, there's one skill or few skills I'm not super comfortable with, and it's always good to have people who are proactive about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I would just rather be more at like a coaching level and helping my other ladies out just because again, I always injure myself every single season. I'm rocking a broken finger right now. So I already injured myself for the once this season. I'm good to go for the rest of the season. It's usually just one a season. So yeah, if I keep doing that, I don't know about the international team. That's rough.
Well, geez, I mean, you already hurt your finger before training officially started, so hopefully that doesn't bode too negatively for the rest of the year. We wish you the best.
No,
Fingers crossed.
thanks. Yeah. Not so well this time, but yeah, some reason I just have this special knack for injuring myself once a season. So I've already gotten mine done this year, it's out of the way preseason, which is great. Usually it's towards the end of the year, so this is good. I'm already done with my injury for the season. I can just play through now.
So there you go.
It's very exciting. We'll see what happens.
So, Tara, we've heard that you had your first training session this morning when we're just recording this past podcast on a Saturday. How did that go? And was there any new recruits down there on the women's side?
Yeah, this is actually our third preseason kick that we've had. We had a lot of new players. We had about 35 people show up for just a kick in the park for our preseason, which is fantastic. We had about seven or so new players show up, and we had a couple of new girls that haven't really been out before show up as well. So we had about 10, I believe 10 women show up to training. Last week we had more women than men because the weather was crappy and the women will come out regardless, but the guys tend to like those sunnier, warmer days on our Bulldogs. So yeah, we had about 15 ladies come out last weekend, a full squad, and so it's looking to be a really good season. We're looking to have a lot of good women out there, and we constantly are growing and getting new ladies every day.
That's fantastic. And right now, what's the balance between Americans and Aussies among the Lady Bulldogs?
Just with the women, we have mostly Americans on our team. I believe we have two Australians this year, but we've predominantly always rocked a full American squad. That's one of the awesome things about the Bulldogs is they're really, really good about incorporating this as now a sport in the United States. Instead of loading our team with Australians, we're trying to really grow it in the United States and make sure our players can continue that growing of the game. So yeah, we've always had a really strong team of people from the United States, so it's exciting.
Yeah, on an earlier podcast, actually, podcast number 4, we had Sarah Rona from the Centennial Tigers, which is a new women's team at the moment, just outside of Denver. Tell us a little bit about the relationship that is growing between those two teams. And obviously, I believe that Sarah was one of your teammates at one stage. How is that sort of maybe benefiting the development of women's footy there in Colorado?
Yeah, I mean, Sarah did used to play for the Denver Bulldogs, and then she separated off and made her own club. She wanted to have it focused primarily on a women's team, solely a women's team. So, I mean, being able to grow the game is amazing. Getting women out to play is our main focus, and just growing the game and across the league for women is fantastic. The United States really started doing that even a little bit before Australia did it. We had our women's teams built up here before the FLW kind of took over, and that's been growing awesome in Australia. And so I think it's fantastic that the United States has such a predominant source of women's teams, and you're able to play and branch off and grow new teams. That's fantastic. We have two women's teams now in Denver area, which is just it's amazing.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you were saying and what Sarah was saying on the previous podcast. I reckon that's a really great blend because obviously the Bulldogs, you guys have won national titles for the women's side and Centennial just starting up. I think it's kind of the best of both worlds because you've got a core group of really experienced, really talented female players at the Denver Bulldogs, and you also have a brand new standalone women's club in Centennial. And if you're a new recruit, you're kind of spoiled for choice. You can either train with some potential newcomers down in Centennial, or you could even, give it a crack with the veterans in Denver. So I think it's a really positive thing. It's a really good development for growing the women's game, especially in the US. So good on you guys.
Yeah, definitely. I think our team this year, we're lacking veterans, actually. The Denver Bulldogs are. So we're definitely growing our team from scratch. A lot of our veteran players have moved on to different, more exciting adventures in their life. So we have probably like a core of 5 or 6 veterans that have been continuing playing for 5 years or more on the team. Um, Anna definitely has been on there for way longer than I have. She's been on since the start of the Denver Bulldogs. And then if we have a few others that have been playing for 5 years or more, but predominantly our team now is mostly rookies or players that have only played for maybe a year to 2 years tops. So we're definitely doing a restart of our team as well and growing back up again and rebuilding. And I hope this year we'll have a successful season.
Yeah, well, you have the regionals there in Denver this year, which is obviously a little bit of a benefit. I'm sure it is for any team that has the opportunity to recruit new players to their team to be able to say, well, there's some of the best teams in our region are coming to us, and not only can you come and watch, you can actually come and play and be involved in that. And I think no, we're still maybe the jury's still out on how beneficial the regionals coming to a particular club venue is for that particular club in the long term. But there's no reason why we can't see that it would actually benefit the development, especially if you're looking for players and wanted to introduce them.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's definitely a positive to be able to host one of the regional tournaments, just because not only do you get clubs coming in from, your area from the United States, but you get, bystanders that are like, oh, what are they doing? You have this large group of people out on a field, and you're going to get some people going, oh, what a sport is that, and get interested. So I think it definitely benefits people to have the regional tournament to be able to grow the sport that way.
Oh, definitely. And it's even a big thing for local tourism to some extent. I remember when we had the Nationals in Wisconsin a couple years ago, like it was an official partnership with Visit Racine or whatever the local tourism agency was. Like the USAFL was did a pretty good job with that in terms of getting the word out and partnering up with different people locally. And yeah, it's definitely a big part of helping grow the game organically just by hosting tournaments and being able to say, "Hey, here's a sport that a lot of Americans don't know exists, but here it is in our backyard."
Yeah, that's very true, Rick. As some might not be aware at the moment, and we mentioned this on a different podcast previously, that the three regional tournaments, West, Central, and East, are now put out for bids by cities, and the sports recreation tourism boards get the opportunity to bring in those players, and sometimes probably close to maybe for regionals, I'm guessing 300 to 400 players. And with those sports commissions slash tourism boards, they actually have to apply now to host those events. So and I see that as a positive, especially on the marketing side of the sport, because that obviously allows the USAFL to infiltrate some of those marketing areas that the tourism boards probably don't really touch on very often. And if it's a sports type of thing, it can only benefit player recruitment and just general awareness.
Yeah, definitely. And it builds positive relationships at the local level in terms of, there are only a certain number of wide open parks, wide open spaces that can accommodate 5, 6 footy ovals right next to each other. So it's good that considering, we've got Westminster Fields up in Denver, we've got locations in Oregon that we've used before, we've got locations in Texas that we've used before. It's good to keep those lines of communication open so that they can contact USAFL in the future and say, hey, if you guys want to come back, we're more than happy to have you. So I think that's a big strategic partnership to help grow the game.
Well, it's interesting about you mentioned about the Racine Nationals a couple of years ago. Um, the whole package of that, I still follow stuff that is Racine. Like I still follow their Facebook page, I still follow their Instagram page, and I'm still interested in some of the things that are happening in that town. On the coast there in Wisconsin, which is, benefit is just shows that that type of cooperation and partnership can be of benefit to cities. So, it's a win for them, and on the tourism side, it can help them down the path, and not just for that particular tournament, but at some other time in the future.
Yeah, now working with the USAFL a little bit more on their marketing and sponsorship side of things, I'd really like to see us open up these tournaments to other cities and states. It's great that Denver's been able to host twice now. I think that's fantastic. I love being able to be closer to home for traveling purposes, but again, it'd be great to showcase those other smaller teams maybe that needed help with their building of their clubs to be able to maybe showcase it at their state. I think that USAFL can hopefully at some point in time be able to branch out to other clubs so that they can do that and then have the opportunity for tourism as well there.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's a challenge in LA. It's a massive city, but in terms of wide open park space, there really isn't much. And so we were really lucky when we found out that, I mean, again, technically Orange County's hosting nationals this year, but it's right outside LA. So it's basically LA, and everyone's going to fly into LA when they arrive. But yeah, like that was a big, where nationals is going to be this fall. It was a big, I think it's a big soccer complex. It was built relatively recently, so it's a big attraction for any USAFL people who are looking around the area. And I think there are a few other spots like further out towards Santa Barbara up on the coast where there might be a few polo fields that could work. I think there's a couple cricket ovals even, but they're privately owned, so you can't really do anything about that. So, but yeah, the fact that you and by extension the USAFL are always on the lookout to find new places and new locations, it's definitely a positive. So keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, the challenge now is, Rick, that we've grown beyond the three field requirements that we had for a very long time. Probably my first nationals was 2002, and probably right up to I think maybe 2011 or 12 even. Um, Only three fields were required. Now we've grown to like five. San Diego was actually six.
Hmm.
Um, and those sort of spaces here in nearly every city in America are just unheard of, probably the right word. Um, Polo fields are pretty good. Anyone doesn't know what a polo field is, it's 400 yards long and 200 yards across. So you can fit three pretty basic fields on it. And uh, we held nationals at those sort of locations a couple of times here in Atlanta, in Wisconsin as well, in Milwaukee, um,
And San Diego.
San Diego as well.
Mhm.
So those types of facilities are pretty rare, and we played on actually polo fields down in Florida before, in Sarasota, had the same sort of facilities. But when you get around the areas of the Midwest where obviously polo is maybe not as popular, and the open spaces tend to be more tiered for drainage and things like that. And it's a challenge to find. I'm sure Doran James, the USAFL operations manager, would dismisses many parks organisations who come to him with a plan to say, well, this is where we want you to play. And it wouldn't take much on Google Maps to determine that it wasn't possible.
Yeah. For all of our listeners back in Australia, the struggle is real. It's definitely a challenge. We don't have footy ovals on every street corner over here in the States. So we have to make do with what we have. And I reckon we do a decent job.
Well, just segueing into a topic at the moment that's in Australia about the game that Essendon and Greater Western Sydney want to play. When they started to look at fields over here, and there obviously isn't anything close to a major stadium that would fit a game like that. There is a stadium down in Fort Lauderdale that the USAFL have used before. It's a cricket stadium, and it seats maybe, I think, 8 to 10,000 people. But it's a big wide open space. But it's not in the greatest area in Broward County there in Fort Lauderdale, and not really a showcase for what the sport would need. Obviously, California would be the best place for that game in the long term. I'm sure people would have seen that there's not a facility there in LA or outside of San Francisco that can host that event.
Oh, yeah, practically speaking, you'd have to kind of, figure something out in a
Mhm.
relatively short period of time. You know, most American football stadiums these days don't have, or they don't still have, I should say, like, a track surrounding it. Like, practically speaking, you could, like, tear out a gridiron field and put down, like, a grassy oval, like, surrounded by a track, but at the same time, that still wouldn't really be AFL standards. So I'm interested to see what they come up with. Again, just on concept, bringing a game to California will be phenomenal and a great way for both the Bombers and the Giants to bring the game here. But they have to do it. They have to do it correctly, and they got to plan everything out, relatively well. So
Yeah. Before we get back to Tara,
Mhm.
um, we haven't forgotten about you, Tara. By the way,
All
uh,
good, guys.
I personally think it'll be at least 2022 before we see that happen.
mm,
I don't think it's going to happen next year. So,
yeah.
and it could even be 2023. So, anyway, Chara, I want to get back to you in about the Denver Bulldogs in general. Last year, I heard that the Denver Bulldogs registered 100 players. So they had 100 player memberships, and I believe that would be a first for a USAFL team.
It definitely was a first. We did register 100 players. We had 100 teams. Last year, we also had two full women's teams go to regionals, which was the first time ever in the USAFL. So that was really, really exciting to have. We're trying to grow our membership again to have over 100 players, but we want all those 100 players to stay. So while we registered them all, they did not all stay throughout the whole season. So what we're trying to do is retention. It's always difficult because people, they travel or they leave or they have vacations and families and things like that. So our main goal this year is to have more retention, better recruiting, and just willpower to stay.
Yeah, that's been kind of a struggle. Well, it's a universal struggle here in the US, but in LA, we've had like upwards of 40, 50 registered players. But yeah, life happens with some people, family stuff, work stuff, travel stuff. So yeah, it is definitely a challenge to make sure that everyone's staying accountable, everyone's going to trainings, everyone who can is playing games. So but yeah, that's really impressive. And I did kind of have a question kind of leading into this, Tara. Do you guys have games as curtain raisers to the men's games, or do you kind of figure things out on your own in terms of who can come to you?
We operate as one club but separate entities. So our women's
Right.
and our men, we're both established teams. So we don't do curtain raisers for the men. We usually try to operate our schedule at least for traveling, so we can all travel together and all play at the same time. Again, for field space, obviously, and paying for those fields and whatnot. But yeah, we have our separate entities of the women and men's team, and we play separate entities, and we're both. Division One team, so we work together but have our separate games. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And is the schedule out yet, or are you still working on it?
Nope, our schedule should be pretty much solidified for this year. We have our home games, our matches set with each other. We're doing the Colorado Cup this year, which is very exciting. Our men's teams have done the Colorado Cup for the past couple of years now, where it's intramural matches, metro games for our men's, and we're going to be introducing that now for the ladies. So that's really exciting to be able to do Colorado Cup with the women.
Tara, just going back, just a question there. You mentioned about the club being two different entities, but the same club. Does the club do promotional events separately for the women and separately for the men, or is everyone involved in the same thing?
We're all involved in the same thing. So we've really, really worked hard in becoming one club. So last year and this year, we really made the initiative to become one club. We used to kind of act more separate with the Denver Bulldogs, the Denver Bulldogs and the Denver Lady Bulldogs. We are very kept very separately. And then the past year, we kind of more grouped together to just be one individual club. So we joined all of our social media together. We hold all of our events together. We have our games together. But we definitely want to be defined as Division One women's team, Division One men's team, and our reserves.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of it seems obvious now, but no, it's great that you guys are able to do that and have all the social events as a unit and all those other things. Going off of that, I assume you guys have co-ed trainings these days?
We do not. We actually have separate trainings. We have trainings on the same nights and same days, obviously, again, just for space and money purposes, but we definitely train separate. So we do our warm ups together. We all, get together pre training. We do our warm ups together and then we separate off and we do our own separate trainings.
Cool.
The one interesting thing about the scheduling side of things, Tara, is that not all of the men's teams, maybe that you're traveling to, have a women's team. And we spoke to like Sarah Rona about that as well at Centennial Tigers. And it's certainly the case further on the East Coast where teams have a women's team, or and then the next women's team is a long way away. So that obviously takes a bit of a challenge up for scheduling, especially if you want to travel with the men's team or the men's team want to travel with the women, which is probably okay too.
Yeah.
Um, but not every team has a women's team, not at the moment, and so I would expect you have to go your separate ways on occasions.
We definitely do. We do that as well. Like if there's a game or a match that the men, for example, like we're gonna go down to Austin to play Austin for the men. Austin does not have a currently don't have a women's team. However, we finagled it to have the other Texas teams come and join us in. So why we won't be playing Austin for the women's side because they don't have a women's team. We'll be having, I believe, Dallas or the other Texan women's team down with us. So that'll be good. We kind of make it work just so
The
we can
Texas
travel.
Heat.
I believe it's going to be the Heat. We have two teams that are coming, kind of combining together, and I don't know which women's exact team, but yeah, I believe it's the Heat, and um, yeah, it's coming with our Austin team. So the men will be playing Austin, and the women will be playing, yeah, the women's teams in Texas. So that'll be really exciting that we were able to still travel and do that together when they were going to be separate this year.
Yeah, and do you guys have any intra-club scrimmages happening in the next few weeks, just so people know?
We don't currently. Our season will start up here May 2nd. I believe that's the first weekend in May. That's when the Denver Bulldogs official season starts. But we will be training every Saturday, like we did today, having a kick, and then we have our Aussie ball game where we combine our men and women together. So we'll be doing that every Saturday leading up to May 2nd. And then our Colorado Cup games, which is our Metro Interleague games, will be starting up, I believe, end of May, end of May. So that's definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah, definitely. And I have a feeling you're kind of kicking yourself here, Kraz, because we talked all about the other tournaments that are coming up this year, but we didn't mention the Colorado Cup, did we?
No, we didn't. It slipped through the cracks there, Rick. How
Mm.
unfortunate of us, but hey, we're not experts by any stretch of the imagination.
I like to think we're
But
semi-experts at this point.
yeah, you have the youth and I have the experience, so together we make a great team.
Yes, definitely. No, that's exciting. And yeah, so do you guys have anything planned for like a season launch or social events to have everyone get around you guys before the season officially starts, or is that still kind of in still being worked out?
That's probably still being worked out. As a club, we'll definitely have a season opener. We usually have our kind of sort of our recruitment night, which kicks off the season, so everyone can sign up, get their dues in, get their shirt for the year. That'll be coming up here shortly, I'm sure. Probably in April, right before the season starts, and we usually do that. Yeah, but we'll be posting. We do a really good job. I'm actually head of our social media for my team, and we have a great group of people that are helping me this year with marketing and social media. So we'll have all of our events posted, all of our trainings posted, etc.
All right. I see you're on social media all the time, Tara, and I saw last week we had you a little clip video of your practice, which was really great. Those little things are like gold as far as I'm concerned. One of the reasons actually we got you on is because you have a little partnership going with Ben Martinez, who's in at the Austin Crows, and you've been talking to the USAFL about helping them on the marketing standpoint and sponsorship. So tell us a little bit about that and what are the plans and maybe what are some of the goals?
Yeah, definitely. I wish Ben could be on here today. We have been working together, Ben and I, for the past 6 months, kind of joining forces. We did Friends of Footy Fire Relief, and now we're doing the USAFL marketing and sponsorship together. So that's been really exciting, especially come from rival teams. So it's really cool that the Denver Bulldogs and the Austin Crows are kind of working together outside of the normal footy realm. But as far as the USAFL goes, Ben and I have just started working on marketing and sponsorship. So we're really, really trying to drive more financial revenue towards the USAFL to help clubs across the nation just have reduced cost of players, be able to have better, involvement, more recognition of the USAFL, what we do, because again, we're not very well known.
So it's more about corporate relationships we're talking about here, other than just maybe smaller sponsorships or small companies. You're looking at something a little larger, right?
Definitely, yeah. We're trying to get more larger corporations involved with USAFL. So we're talking to people like Telstra or Qantas. Smaller ones are great too. We're just really trying to boost the USAFL again, just to get more recognition of footy across the United States, because we're still a growing sport, and a lot of people don't know about us. And so by providing that marketing and sponsorship, we get more outreach to the clubs across the nation. We get more outreach to international people as well, so they know that we do have footy in the United States. We're one of the oldest footy clubs or leagues in the world, outside of obviously Australia and a couple others. We started, I think, we're like the third or fourth oldest. The United States is, yet we're the most underrepresented. So we're trying to switch that so that the United States is a little bit more out there for people to know that we do have footy here.
Absolutely. And for those of our listeners again who may not be aware, Ben is actually the one of the administrators for a Facebook group called Supporters of Australian Football in the USA, and that group has done a lot of good stuff and is definitely helped getting the word out about footy outside of Australia. So yeah, you guys are doing really well, and obviously we've talked about that previously, in private or on Facebook. So it's great seeing new ideas and new people getting involved and helping grow the game the best way we can.
Yeah, we definitely would love help though. So if anyone, listening out there wants to help with our marketing or sponsorship, we're more than happy to like bring people on board. The USAFL has done limited amounts of, working within their own small organization and the league, with the board. And so I think it'd be really helpful to branch out and have as many supporters and people helping as possible. The more the merrier, really.
Yeah, it's interesting to maybe let all our listeners know that like 99% of the USAFL, and that includes clubs and all the administrators, are actually volunteers. So the USAFL have very few contractors, and really the support has to come from the teams, the players, the general community, and yourself and Ben, who want to step up and do a little bit more than what would be normally expected. So the wider we throw that blanket and bring more people in, that it can only benefit the game in the long term. So kudos to yourself, Tara, and Ben, who we'll have on pretty soon as well, and get his ideas as well. Being Australian, Ben has probably a slightly different perspective to look at things as well. It'll be it can only go forward. So well done on that. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I love this sport so much. Playing it for the past 5 years, it's saved my life many times. Footy has, and so being able to give back on a different level rather than just being a player has been awesome. And now, I do that with my own club, but now being able to do that through the league as a whole is just really something special. So I'm really glad I get to be a part of that and do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, you guys are doing a great job and keep up the good work.
Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate that. We're just starting, so we got a long ways to go.
We'll, after this podcast is released, we'll share a few of the links to where you can connect to Ben and Tara, and maybe if you've got some ideas, even ideas are always out there, but I'm sure they're after connections and things like that. So if you've got the opportunity, jump in. You can only benefit yourself as a person by helping this sport grow, and you get something out of it. You never know. Tara, it's been great talking to you today. Unless you've got anyone you want to shout out to right now.
No, I just want to say thank you guys so much. I love listening to your podcast. I think it's great that you guys have started this, and I can't wait to see where you guys go with it. So keep on doing your podcast and looking forward to listening more.
Many thanks, Tara. Cheers.
Thanks,
Cheers, guys.
Tara.
Thank you guys so much.
See you soon. Bye.
Outside 50 is brought to you with the help of Play Aussie USA. Play Aussie is the only place in the USA you can buy the famous Sharon football, a proud sponsor of the USAFL. Visit them at playaussie.com.